Let's get some analysis on this. Joining me now is Mark Meirowitz. He's a professor of constitutional law at State University of New York, Maritime College, and he's joining me live from New York. Mark, great to have you here with us on TRT World. I want to begin the discussion by talking about the indictment of Nicolas Maduro and how his trial is going to take place. I mean, as we have been saying, it's a very complex situation. What kind of rights does he have right now when he is in New York?
Well, I'm an attorney also, and as your attorney guest said, he'll have the right to counsel and the right to present a defense. Again, notice the United States followed legal procedures as it did with Noriega in Panama a number of years ago, where he was actually taken from Panama to the United States to stand trial. And so, again, it will proceed like any other defendant, but I think in this case, it's probably one of the most high-profile defendants, and I'm sure he will have a very, very significant legal defense.
When it comes to his representation, would he be given a choice to choose what he wants for himself? And if he wants his own lawyer, how does that work? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, Venezuela is under sanctions right now. So I want to understand, how would he pay for his lawyer?
Well, I mean, I don't understand the whole question. And even to follow up from your other interviews, there is still a government there. It's not a legitimate government. They have an ambassador to the United Nations who is obviously a chavista with the government. You have a Supreme Court in Venezuela, which is a supporter of Maduro and his criminal gang. So yes, they have. I'm assuming they have funds to do this. And if they don't have funds to do it, counsel will be appointed. And we have that. We have a legal aid society. So he will have a representation. That's not the issue. The issue, I think, will be litigated, which is the taking of, the leader of this country into the United States to face trial, and his wife. They're under indictment. And by the way, Dulce Rodriguez, the so-called vice president, was illegitimate because you've had a number of presidents elected, Mr. Gonzalez in 2024, Ms. Machado, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, are the legitimate elected presidents. So the whole thing, from the point of view of Venezuela, is really a charade. I happen to know one of the previous UN ambassadors before Chavez, and Venezuela was a wonderful, thriving country. And these people, including Maduro, have led to the destruction of Venezuela, the fleeing, as you said, of 7 million people running away, the complete destruction of their oil resource infrastructure. Something had to be done about it. And so something was done. Now, that will be debated all over the world as to whether this was a good thing or a bad thing, as you've done so very, very well on your program so far today. But I think at the end of the day, as Europeans have said and others, this is not a legitimate leader, and he's also allegedly, in indictment, committed crimes. So he'll go to trial, just like Noriega in Panama. I mean, it's not like these other dictators that you mentioned, China, Russia, North Korea. Hey, they have no legitimate legal system. If they actually charge you with a crime, you're basically convicted and sent to prison. Here, the person goes to court. There's news coverage, as your reporter showed, and Times, Daily, news.
But I mean, Mark, to that point about Nicolas Maduro and his indictment, yes, he was indicted in New York. Yes, the United States has some serious accusations against Nicolas Maduro. But there's a legal mechanism, right? Because in the end, he was in a foreign country. So the legal process, and I've spoken to some lawyers about this as well, the legal system says that there should be an extradition request or perhaps an international criminal court warrant or an international warrant. None of this was followed by the United States. So the way this whole operation was executed, do you think as a lawyer it was legal?
Well, I'm not the lawyer on the case. Maybe I'll be. But
I'm sure you have an opinion on this, don't you?
I mean, you raise an issue that's definitely a significant issue, which the defense in this case will raise. They will say you can't do that, but the precedent is there with Noriega. In other words, if someone flees, is outside the United States committing crimes against the United States. The question is there extraterritorial jurisdiction to take that person and bring them? Now, the extradition request that you talk about, I think that's rather a fallacy, if I may, with all due respect, because Venezuela, if the United States is correct, is essentially a criminal enterprise. If so, supposing the United States sent an extradition request to Venezuela government and said, here's an indictment, we accuse Mr. Maduro of crimes, of running narcotics rings or narcotics and all that, what do you suppose the so-called government, not legitimate government, illegitimate government of Venezuela would say? No, we're not. And by the way, I don't know whether Venezuela has an active extradition treaty with the United States. That would also depend whether there is a treaty. But the way it works is you make a request. Oh, here's an indictment, you make a request. Now, what are the chances and the odds that the Venezuelan government under Maduro or Rodriguez would agree to, yes, we will extradite our president to your country to serve trial? The chances of that are, I think, zero or less than zero. So therefore, the point that your lawyer colleagues are making, I don't think is valid. Of course, the defense will argue that this is not a legitimate arrest. There was no appropriate procedure, as you said. But I don't think that flies, because extradition, meaningless. A government that is essentially, if it is a criminal enterprise, you don't go to the criminal enterprise and say, well, you please give me your leader and bring him to trial in this country. If he's committed these crimes, there has to be some recourse. But as I said, the United States is a country of laws, and I say God bless America for that. And we have laws. A lawyer will be appointed. I'm sure he will have a very, very top lawyer to represent him and pursue these issues and other issues in terms of whether he committed crimes, whether other people, whether he was aware of it or not aware of it. And this thing is going to go on and on and on and on and on. And it's going to be a big story for a long time. And like with Noriega, remember Noriega was also taken from Panama and brought to trial and brought to prison. So, apparently that mountain has been crossed already in terms of legal precedent. I don't know the legal precedents offhand, but the extradition route is a route to nowhere that would not be efficacious whatsoever, I don't think.
All right, Mark Meirowitz, indeed, we'll have more clarity on the case when Nicolas Maduro appears in this Manhattan federal court on Monday. As always, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much for joining me here on TRT World.
Same here. It was a pleasure to join you. Thank you.